Good morning, good morning. How are you? I'm glad to see all of y'all here this morning. We are starting a new kind of series leading up to our 150th anniversary on October 15th. And so we've got a lot of great music that's going to be accompanying all of that. But I'll leave that to the announcements to explain all the great things that are happening in celebration of the sesquiquentennial, I don't know. You do it. Yeah. But to start out, we are going to be singing a song you guys know very well. It's kind of the spirit of 1010, Come As You Are by the Many. So please stand as you're willing and able, and let's sing together this morning. Come, you who've been wounded, all you who've lost hope. Come, you who are longing for what you don't even know. Come, you hungry for justice, aching for heaven on earth. Come, you who've been tossed aside, don't remember what you're worth. Come as you are, come you weary, come and lay your burdens down. Come as you are, bring your hopes, bring your doubts and your scars. Come as you are. Sing it with me, y'all. Come, you who've been cast out, all you who've been shamed. Come, you who are looking for that mystery you can't name. Come, you crying for mercy, hoping for peace on earth. Come, you carrying questions, all you've been so hurt. Come as you are, come you weary, come and lay your burdens down. Come as you are, bring your hopes, bring your doubts and your scars. Come as you are. Sing it one more time, y'all. Come as you are, come you weary, come and lay your burdens down. Come as you are, bring your hopes, bring your doubts and your scars. Come as you are. Come as you are. Y'all, you are welcome here just as you are in this place today. Extend that grace to the people around you by passing the peace with one another this morning and greeting another in that spirit.
Good morning, 1010. How are we on this beautiful Sunday morning? Thanks for the response. My name is Linnea Blakemore. I am the Director of Youth Ministry here at University Christian Church, and I'm so grateful that you decided to join us for worship this morning. If you will, at the back of each of the long tables and around the settees at the front, there are some attendance pads. If you would fill that out for us just to let us know that you're here, you can give us some of your contact info so we can get you plugged in. I promise we won't fill your inbox with a bunch of emails. And also at the back table, we have a little bowl for prayer concerns. Our clergy staff actually come together each week and take those and pray over them, and we would be honored to pray for your joys and concerns. I wanted to direct our attention. We have a new projector, an old projector, an old, new projector. It's been fixed. So big thank you to our tech team at the back for putting that together. Yes. So if you see them around today, please say thank you. It is heavy, and they spent a lot of hours trying to get it put back up for us today. Something that's coming up in the life of UCC is we have a grief group that's starting on October 4th. That will meet in room 201 every Wednesday at 6 p.m. And if you'd like more information, you can reach out to Reverend Shannon Moore, and his email is up on the slide there. And as Steph pointed out this morning, we are celebrating 150 years of UCC coming up in a couple of weeks. We're starting a sermon series off today on the book of Philippians. At the back table, you can find some bookmarks and read alongside that book throughout the next couple of weeks with us if you'd like. We also have some club cards that give you information about what is coming up over the next few weeks. I want to draw your attention to October 15th. That's going to be a really big day for us. That's our big bash. So we are going to have one worship service at 10:30. So if you show up at 10 o'clock, you'll be a little early, but that's all right. And we're going to be combined in the sanctuary all together. And then we will be having a big anniversary party at noon here in Walker Hall. So we would love to see you guys out there to celebrate 150 years. Can we give a round of applause for that? That's kind of incredible. Thank you. Will you guys pray with me? God of patience, we thank you for the gift of this day, a day of rest, reflection, and renewal in your presence. We lift our worship to you, God. Use us as instruments of your grace and compassion to those in our community who need your touch. May we know your story and our place within it. May we remember your mighty works and deeds, that we might know that you are the God of all ages. May we claim your promise and share your love. God, we are listening. Speak to us today. Gently call us back to you. Reclaim us with your love. Pour your Spirit into our hearts today as you poured out your very self through your beloved Son who taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Well, good morning, church. You know, I got to tell you, you look really good for 150. You don't look a day over 149. For 150 years, University Christian Church has been partnering with God to transform the world by living out Christ's courageous love. And this morning, for the next 2 Sundays, we are going to be celebrating that incredible milestone. Our theme will be a work in progress, as you just saw, 150 years of partnering with God. And we're going to take some time this morning. We're going to do some looking back at where we've come from. Next week, we're going to acknowledge and sort of celebrate the church we are today. And then on October 15th, as Linnea says, when we all gather together for one service at 10:30 in the sanctuary, we're gonna focus on the next 150 years. Scott Colglazier, who's one of the senior ministers that was here a number of years ago, will be back, and he and I are going to have a dialogue sermon, and we're going to spend some time talking about the future of the church in a time in which it's difficult to be church, and I'm looking forward to that. You know, one of the ways that we will experience this milestone is to do so through the lens of another church, and to see how they saw themselves in a time sort of similar to this. The Apostle Paul founded the church in Philippi, and you can read about that founding is when he started the church in Acts chapter 16. And much like University Christian Church, that was a church that had grown and had thrived and become a great church. But even still, even in the midst of all that, there had been struggles from time to time. They'd faced some problems. Scholars aren't exactly sure and don't agree on necessarily what all of those problems were. My guess is that it was probably a combination of both internal but also external factors that led to some of those struggles. But as we will hear in the next couple of weeks, Paul implored them to press on towards the goal, the heavenly call of God in Christ Jesus. And so as we mark this important milestone and we celebrate who we are, and as we look at who we will be in the next 150 years, I want us as a congregation, and I'm inviting the entire congregation in encouraging and inviting, begging, imploring, I don't know, whatever language you want to use there, that for the next 2 weeks, we're going to read together through the book of Philippians. Now, I promise it's not that long. It's only 4 chapters. And we have put together a reading plan that you will be able to read through that in just 10 days. So Monday through Friday, the next 2 weeks, we've got these bookmarks that are at the back there, and you can find them throughout the church building. That just kind of walks us through reading that, and we're gonna do that as a celebration, and so I want to invite you to commit to doing this in honor of this anniversary of this celebration, and be sure to pick up, like I said, your bookmark. So the text that we're going to be looking at this morning to begin this journey of looking back, but also looking ahead, we're going to look at the introduction and also the beginning of the letter from Paul to the church in Philippi. Now, it may be interesting to you that in almost every letter that Paul writes to churches that he had founded, and even those that he didn't find, he always starts with an introduction and with a thanksgiving, and a note of thanksgiving. The only church that he didn't do that for was in the book of Galatians. Now, we don't know what was going on in Galatia, but Paul was not having any of it. He did not approve to whatever was going on in Galatia. So this morning, as you'll hear, he begins with greetings, and then he jumps in to express his gratitude for who they are as a church, but also expresses his confidence, as you'll hear in just a minute, that God is not done with them, right? Their best days are not behind them. Their best days are ahead of them. That they will complete the work of grace in the lives of those Philippian Christians. And he assures them that their faith in Christ would enable them to do what is right, even in the midst of the most trying of circumstances. So this morning, I want to invite Kristen, who's going to come up, and to listen to what Paul says to the church in these opening remarks.
A reading from the book of Philippians, chapter 1, verses 3 through 11. I thank my God for every remembrance of you, always in every one of my prayers for all of you, praying for joy for your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. It is right for me to think this way about all of you, because I hold you in my heart. For all of you are my partners in God's grace, both in my imprisonment and in the defense and confirmation of the gospel. For God is my witness, how I long for all of you with the tender affection of Christ Jesus. And this is my prayer, that your love may overflow more and more with knowledge and full insight to help you to determine what really matters, so that in the day of Christ you may be pure and blameless, having produced the harvest of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ for the glory and praise of God. The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God, indeed. Every time I think of you, Paul says, every time I think of you, I give thanks to God. And this, he says, is my prayer, that your love may overflow more and more. As we look around us at this day of remembering, of celebrating the past, all that has brought us to this moment in our history, we realize, perhaps in moments like this more so than any other time, that where we stand today is because of those that have gone before us. That where we are today as a church is in part because of those that have gone before us. There was a New York Times article a number of years ago that talked about an author by the name of Ernest J. Gaines, who was a descendant of former slaves. And even now, in his 80s, he spends his time caring for an old cemetery on the former plantation where 5 generations of his descendants, of his ancestors going back to slavery, are buried. And in it, he says this. In that article, he says this. He says, if I didn't have those people back there, I would never have anything to write about. He says, that's where I get all my stories from. My life is from them, and I'm going to do everything to keep this up for them in memory. He said, that is my duty from now until the day that I die. In many ways, that's what we do on days like today. When we remember and celebrate our past, we care for those stories. We care for those memories of those people that have gone before us. And I would argue that that is one of the greatest ways that we honor those that have gone before us. So I want to tell you some stories a little bit this morning about sort of how we got founded, about our origins as a church, and then see if I can tie it together at the end. So back in 1873, in the aftermath of the Civil War, about 40 miles from here, just outside of where Granbury is today, there was a little village called Thorpe Spring, Texas, and it was not much there. There was basically a stagecoach stop in the middle of a cattle frontier, and on the first Monday in September, 2 brothers, Addison and Randolph Clark, with the help from their father Joseph, both of whom were preachers in what is now known as the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, which is the denomination of which we're a part of. They opened the doors to a new college, to a new university, and they called it Adran Male and Female College. And on that first Monday, they had 13 students. They had 13 students. Now, this was more than just a Bible college. They didn't want it just to be a Bible college. They wanted it to be a liberal arts university. And they believed that an important part of a liberal arts education included a number of different things. One, reason. They wanted to be able to have, for their students to be able to think, to have critical thinking, but also an important part of a liberal arts education was the study of Scripture, of religion, of spirituality. And so, as you can imagine, worship was an important part of the life of that church. And so every Sunday, they held services in the school's auditorium that would eventually become the college chapel. And thus began what they referred to as the university church. And it was mostly consisting of students, faculty, and staff, but also because the Clark brothers were such good preachers, people from all around the village would come. They would come on horseback just to hear, in part because there was not a lot of other churches around, and so people from the village would come. And so thus, as one author put it, the town and gown were one church together in the college chapel. Within 5 years, the enrollment of that school had grown from 13 up to 450 students. and the Clarks, along with their spouses, they sold everything that they had in order to invest in a larger building. But after struggling for a few more years just to make ends meet, in 1889, they reached out to the church, the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, who willingly adopted and endorsed the college. And a few years later, the trustees decided to change the name from Adran Male and Female College to Adran Christian University, to signify an even stronger connection to the church. Now, despite that, despite the influx of support and help from the church, they still struggled financially. They were never quite able to match income with expenditures. And so in 1895, they decided to say goodbye to Thorpe Spring, and they moved the school and the church to Waco, just a few miles from Baylor University. And then a few years after that, the trustees changed the name of the school from Adran to Texas Christian University. Now, some of us may know what happened in the coming years down in Waco. In 1910, there was a mysterious fire. Not going to say it was the Baylor Bears, but I'm not going to say it wasn't. We don't know for sure. But this mysterious fire destroyed the entire campus. And so it was that year that TCU decided to move to Fort Worth. Now, one of the things that in reading all the history, they just sort of opened it up to any city in Texas to see who wanted this university, and they said that there were tons of cities that wanted to host TCU, but it was the city leaders of Fort Worth, and I love this part, who felt a college might help and soften their reputation as a rowdy cow town, the home of Hell's Half Acre, where the cattle industry and the pending new railroad created a boisterous and unruly culture here in Fort Worth. And so what better to soften the edges than to bring a Christian university to Cowtown? Now, the University Church would continue to meet on campus here in Fort Worth, and a couple years later, they called Colby D. Hall. Those of you who have been students over there know that that he is the patron saint of freshman girls, Colby D. Hall, to be their first, to be the part-time pastor. He was a religion professor at the time, and they called him to be the pastor of the church. Now, 1917 was a big year because that was the year that the church officially became a church. They officially organized. They were still meeting in the college chapel at the time, and 60 members signed the official charter to start this church. And that was the same year that Walter P. Jennings was called to be the first-time pastor. He looks like a mean guy, doesn't he? He doesn't look like he'd be all that warm and friendly, but I've heard really good things about him. In fact, I told this story this morning after at the 9 o'clock, and one of the women, Ellen Lewis, who is retired now, she came up to me and she said, "Just so you know, I went through seminary on the Walter P. Jennings Memorial Scholarship." Which is kind of a cool story there that I didn't know about that. So Jennings was able to grow the church from 60 that first year to within the next year had grown to 235 members. And they started making plans at the time to build a church building. They started raising funds. They made a connection with the university that they were going to help finance it. But as you know, if you know anything about the economy in that time, it wasn't a real good time to be raising funds. And so the start of the Depression delayed their hopes and their dreams of building a church for a few years until 1925, when Mary Burnett donated a ton of land in this area. She's the one that the library is now named after. She donated a ton of land, and a portion of that, the church donated to this university church, and that is the land on which we now sit. And so that was a big time in that. The following year, the Board of Trustees of the church decided to name the church University Christian Church. And the letterhead read, "The spiritual life is the soul and the salvation of a university." The spiritual life is the soul and the salvation of a university. Now, 1929, you saw in the video just a minute ago, was the groundbreaking ceremony. It included Colby D. Hall, who I mentioned a moment ago, as well as Preston Gray, who was the current seminary, was the minister at the time, and E.M. Waits, who was also a member. There's the president of TCU at the time. There's now a dorm named after E.M. Waits, as well as a number of other dignitaries from around the city of Fort Worth that came and broke ground on that day. Again, right in the midst of depression, they decided to break ground. As you can imagine, it took a while. The process was slow. The depression certainly didn't help that. But then on March 5th, 1933, there was this big cornerstone laying ceremony, and that was the same day. That was the same day that President Roosevelt closed all the banks, ordered that all the banks be closed for the day in order to help stave off the Great Depression that was rampant at that time. Now, just think about that for a minute, that as a church, we laid the foundation of our building on the very day that the banks were closed to help stave off the Great Depression. And despite those incredible, uncertain times, just 2 months later, on March 6th, the first worship service was held in the new sanctuary, and it wasn't even completed yet. But yet they still gathered. They were so excited to gather together, and it was close enough to finish that they did that. Now, that's an important story in the history and in the lore of University Christian Church. And it always amazes me, it always inspires me, because I think that story, perhaps more than any other, really speaks to the courage, the faith, the trust of this congregation, that's a part of our DNA, right? That we are always willing to face struggles bravery, with a spirit of courage, with hope, with faith. Now, having said all that, you've heard me say probably that the church is at its best, especially when it's being its most faithful. The church at its best is not a place where, but a people who. The church at its best is not a place where, but a people who. And I believe that to be true with all that I am. And our history as a congregation points us towards that, because if you do the math, the first 60 years of who we are as a congregation, our first 60 years, we didn't have a place to call our own, right? What mattered was not where, but who. Colby D. Hall wrote a history of University Christian Church, and then he starts it by saying this. He says, any church that can survive for 60 years without having a meeting house of its own must have some genuine vitality. Any church that can survive for 60 years without a place to call home must have some genuine vitality. So, in times like this, as we celebrate the last 150 years, I think it's important for us not to focus on the building. Oftentimes, that's what we think of when we think of a church. We often think of the building. But rather, it's more important for us to focus on the faith of the people that built it, right? Of the people that served it, of the people of the faith that led it, the people that worshiped here, right? The people who helped it become one of the largest, most visible local congregations in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, which we are to this day. So I want us to talk about for just a minute some of the people that helped us get to where we are today. People like Granville Walker, who was the senior minister from 1943 and until his retirement in 1973. So for 30 years, he was the senior minister at University Christian Church. And really, in a lot of ways, he was the one that took it from just a few hundred up to 3,500 people when he retired. That was the thing. Now, I love to tell this story. Some of you all know sort of the legend and the lore of Woodstock. You know what I mean by that? that of all the people that went to Woodstock, that they anticipate, the experts, the people that were there, anticipate that there was probably about 400,000 people that went to Woodstock back in the 60s. If you look at the pictures of the day, that only probably 30 to 40,000 people were there every day. But yet, if you ask how many people, over 1 million people have said, yeah, I was at Woodstock. Yeah, I was at Woodstock. Yeah, of course. I was at Woodstock. Now, here's the thing. The legend of Granville Walker is sort of the same thing. Because in the 6 years that I've been here, I've had over 1 million people say, I was baptized by Granville Walker. Now, I know that there's going to come up after the service this morning, people go, no, really, I really was baptized by Granville Walker. And that may be true. It probably is true. But I always joke that the legend and the lore of who Granville Walker was and what he meant to this church is immeasurable. Not only did he help grow this church, but he was also a giant in the city of Fort Worth. He was a vocal leader back in the 50s and 60s for civil rights, for racial justice. He helped form the Tarrant County Council of Churches to bring all the churches together to pull our resources to make sure that we were all working on the same thing, pulling the city in the same direction. Granville Walker is an amazing, amazing leader. We'd also be remiss if we didn't talk about people like Charles Sanders, who is still a part of our congregation today, sings in the chancel choir. He did congregational care here for 24 years before he retired. And he did hundreds, maybe even thousands of weddings and funerals here at University Christian Church in those 24 years. I think of people like Ralph Stone, who was the minister of students for almost 30 years. And at one point would have on Wednesday nights about 600 students from across the street that would gather together for services, a college ministry that would serve 600 people. I think about people like Cindy Tweddell, like Jean Bryce, Albert Pennybacker, Scott Colglacier, who you'll meet in a couple of weeks. Think about people like Ron Shirey, who was the choir master here for a number of years, who was just an amazing, amazing musician. Betty Bowles, who served as our organist for 30 years and still is a part of our congregation. I also think about the program staff and some of the secretaries and the administrative folks, because any pastor will tell you that they are the ones that really get things done. They are the ones that run the church. And so I think about people like Ora Shelton, who was the director of religious education, as well as had a number of other roles within the life of the church. And she worked at University Christian Church from 1946 until 1980. But really, if I'm honest, it's not the church staff at all that we should be remembering today. I would argue that it's not the church staff at all. It's the lay people. It's the people like you that would show up week after week after week, not because you were paid to come, but because this was your church home. And there were people that loved this church, that served this church, that gave and served and prayed and gave the very best of who they were. Now, I started thinking in preparation for this, that if I named one of those people, I would have to name 10. And if I named 10 of them, I would have to name 1,000. And so instead, what I'm going to simply do is just simply to invite you to think about some of those people in your life, whether it's this church or the church that you grew up in, but who were those people that helped you become who you are? Who are those people that helped shape your faith? And I want you to hold on to those people and just hold them in your heart for a minute. Maybe even whisper their name out loud. But just think about some of those people. And once we start, we can't stop. Like Paul says, every time we think of them, we give thanks to God. Now, one more story. In the fall of 1986, there was a TCU student that was living in Clark Dorm across the street, and he came over here one Sunday morning, and he sat in the sanctuary. And in the midst of that worship service, surrounded by the love and the grace of this congregation, he experienced in the midst of that worship service a very clear, distinct call to ministry. Sitting in the pews of University Christian Church. And it changed his life. That call to ministry changed that young boy's life. And the truth is that 30 years later, as a sign of pure grace, you called me to come back and to lead you and to serve you, to minister alongside of you, because it was here that I learned what it means to be church. That I experienced in a very real way a profound religious experience that has changed my life. And I came back because this is an amazing church. An amazing church with a rich, long history, and in good times and in hard times, this community of faith has served as a place where open minds and loving hearts help heal the world. And thanks to the brave and courageous vision of leaders, we have never backed down from big challenges. Sir Isaac Newton, who was writing to his rival Robert Hooke back in 1676, said, "If I have seen a little further, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants." Church, there have been giants in our past, upon whose shoulders we now stand, and they have shown us what it means to be people of faith. They have showed us that we are all children of God, that we are loved as we are, not for who we think we should be, but who we are today. And so now, as we celebrate 150 years of being church, we stand on their shoulders. We stand on their shoulders, and with gratitude for their sacrifice and for their commitment, we can look into the future and we can see that because of the way that they nurtured us into faith, that not only do we have a rich and vital history, that our best days are ahead of us. That not only do we have a rich and vital history, that we have a rich future as well. Every time I think of you, Paul says, I give thanks to God. And this is my prayer, that your love may overflow more and more and more. Will you pray with me? Eternal living God, with grateful hearts, we remember what it means to be church. We honor and we celebrate our past, all of those people that have shaped us and helped us become who we are. And we ask now, God, that in the days ahead, that you will continue to guide us and lead us and to help us to become even more like the church that we say we are. That you will help us to become the church that you called and created us to be 150 years ago. We pray all of this in your holy and sacred name. And all God's people said.
We're about to sing a hymn that we have not sung in 1010 before, even if you are familiar with it. So I'm gonna sing the first stanza for you, and then we're gonna sing it again all together to kind of jump into it. Sound good? Yeah. Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love, the fellowship of kindred minds is like to that above. Sing that with me, y'all. Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love, the fellowship of kindred minds is like to that above. before our Maker's throne, we pour our ardent prayers, our fears, our hopes, our aims, our one, our comforts and our cares. We share our mutual woes, our mutual burdens bear, and often for each other flows the sympathizing tear. When we are called to part, it gives us inward pain, but we shall still be joined in heart and hope to meet again. All right, friends. We are, over the next couple of, well, I guess just 2 weeks. It's this week and next week. We don't have a series song for this new series. We're kind of just singing closing songs, if you will. But we are singing some familiar ones and ones that you guys know very well. So to close this service out about our past and connection to our ancestors in faith, specifically from this church and the standing on the shoulders of giants idea that we discussed, that Russ discussed earlier in his sermon, we're going to be singing a song you guys know well, a song called Carry by Joy Oladokun. And it's a really great song for this because at the end it just says, we were made to carry each other, and I'm here to carry you. That continuation of carrying each other through the next 150 years, right? So please stand as you're willing and able. Let's sing this song together, y'all. As we awake to face the day, just thought I'd take the time to say, I'm glad to be alive, breathing right in time with you. You and I are nothing new, just two old souls that will fade into the everlasting grace. But before we fade, we've got a lot to do. 'Cause can't you see this world is chaos in color? It's wild and strange, but it's wonderful too. If the weight of it ever tries to pull you under, know this much is true. We were made to carry each other, and I'm here to carry you. You and I have storms we'll face, but every cloud is lined with grace. The morning comes to break the hard and heavy chains of the night that tried to hold you. You and I have dreams to chase. We've got lives to lead, no time to waste, and there's no need to wait. Yeah, we know that love's where we were made to be. 'Cause can't you see this world is chaos in color? It's wild and strange, but it's wonderful too. If the weight of it ever tries to pull you under, know this much is true. We were made to carry each other, and I'm here to carry you. So if you were here with us the last time we did this as a series song, you know this part is where it gets kind of churchy, yeah? So I'm relying on y'all to get kind of churchy with me, yeah? Let's go for it. Oh, I was made to carry you. There we go. One day you're gonna carry me too. Oh, I was made to carry you. One day you're gonna carry me too. Sing it out, y'all. Oh, I was made to carry you. One day you're gonna carry me too. Like you believe it. Oh, I was made to carry you. One day you're gonna carry me too. Oh, this world is chaos in color. It's wild and strange, but it's wonderful too. If the weight of it ever tries to pull you under, know this much is true. We were made and I'm here to carry you.
Awesome. Mic's on now.
Yeah, mic's on now, yeah.
Carry, I like that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
nice. Just a couple of things before you go today. Some post-worship opportunities. We got the Bridge. That Bridge is an awesome group of young folks. They're meeting you Sunday school, young adult Sunday school, all the regular stuff. The post-worship conversation, if you're curious about that, we just gather around the purple couch and just talk about, it's very informal, about the service or whatever else comes up. Sometimes it takes a weird turn. You never know. And then some stuff going on. We have a new Sunday school service before this or Sunday school class before and after this service. You can check those out. Not the 9 o'clock, you missed that one, but you could still scoot up to 203 for the 11 o'clock if you're interested in that. Sunday activities, all the same stuff except for the college worship service centered is not happening tonight. So I will be at the back door. If you have any questions about that grief group that Linnea mentioned earlier or anything else, I'll just be there. Let's sing the best song in the world.
Let's get into
right.
it, yeah. In the right key, yeah. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord cause God's face to shine upon you. See God smile at just the thought of you. May God rule in every part of you, and peace be with you. Go in peace, y'all.